Hi, my name is Sean, and the reason why I'm going to do this video blog, and this hopefully will be the first of a number, is because I'm trying to get off something called Ativan, which is benzodiazepine, and another drug called lamotrigine, which I was put on, unfortunately, many years ago. And I am in a detox center, an alternative rehab detox center. That is pretty fascinating. I'm in Sedona, Arizona, in the middle of the desert, and I've left Toronto, Canada, to do this because I searched far and wide to find something that would help me detox and get off these medicines, because the regular sort of allopathic type of medicine just didn't work for me. And not only that, I think the pharmaceuticals, etc., are not helpful, and I've tried to get off on my own, and I can't, and there hasn't been really anything effective that's really helped me to get off these drugs. So I'll tell you why I got on these drugs. I'll give you a little background. All in all, I'm a very happy person, love life, running 2 businesses, trying to make them work. I love sports. I got great friends and family. But I've had a lot of struggles, and sort of started back when I was 14 years old. I played pretty intense hockey. It was my passion, and I ended up getting pneumonia while I was playing. But you're a stupid 14-year-old kid. You don't care. You don't even know you're sick when you're so sick. And I pushed my body too far. Long story short, I got my body thought it was fighting the pneumonia, but actually what it did is it sort of killed the sheath around the nerves. And it made me paralyzed from head to toe, so I couldn't move anything, catheter, feeding tube. So I was in the hospital for a year with that, which probably was pretty intense emotionally for me, although when you're a kid, you quickly bounce back, and I was excited about watching hockey or joking with the nurses, or you find ways to deal with things that you normally, when I'm older, I can't even imagine being paralyzed. But I got better, and only a number, probably only just over half of people that actually get better. I was very lucky, except I couldn't play any more hockey because I had a little slight foot drop thing. So the only sport I couldn't play was hockey. I could play every other sport. But anyway, so then early 20s, I probably had my first depression, went on Prozac. I just felt blah. I was drinking and partying a couple times a week, and I was enjoying going out at night, but I just didn't have any desire, any energy, and didn't care about things. And it was in the 80s, so Prozac was a big deal then, and everyone was on it, and my parents said, "Oh, why don't you try that?" And I tried it, and sure enough, I felt great, and I was I got back into film company and into relationship, and playing sports and everything, but I didn't like the side effects at all. I thought they were horrible, and I went off the drug, and was fine for many years. Probably it sort of, I got into things I loved, and I, long story short again, I ended up going to Thailand when I was 27 years old, left my film job. I was selling film for a film company, traveling all over, which I enjoyed, but I found it, I needed to get away, and so I went to Thailand, and I decided I'm not a pot smoker, and I smoked half a joint of pot when I was there, and it triggered this profound depression, which I had 12 hours of complete and utter fear, misery. My temperature went to 104. I thought I was going to die. I was with a doctor and his wife who I'd met there, who were traveling, and they actually were so afraid by what was happening to me, they took off because they'd actually given me the pot, so they were freaked out I was going to die. So that was overwhelming, and it probably triggered a cascade of chemical emotions for me, and plus I hadn't also dealt with the paralysis when I was 14, so I think those two things culminated into a real sort of scary couple of years after that, and I was put on certain medications, and it took a while to find the right ones, and this depression was more of a fear, anxiety, feeling like I was gonna, this tense of fight or flight feeling where I was always edgy and afraid and quite scary. But I got the right medications, and I ended up feeling much better and went back into my life. And again, ended up working in the internet advertising world and had a great job and had another long relationship and was doing not bad. But I really sort of got into meditation and trying natural medicine, and I was doing a ton of exercise, and I was talking on the distress lines with other people that were suffering from depression. So that really did those things really helped me, and I felt much better, and life was very good. Not on any drugs until I was 37, and at 37 years old, which was that was 7 years ago, I ended up going to my friend's cottage, and stupidly, I hadn't smoked pot. I smoked it once in my life, and I smoked when I was 37 years old, and ended up getting while I was at the cottage, just because I felt like, oh my God, I'm better. I've done everything possible to feel better. I'm doing alternative stuff, and for some stupid reason, I thought, I'll just have a few puffs. I'm sure I'm sure my brain's better. Anyways, long story short, same thing happened. I got just as depressed for 12 hours and anxious, and my temperature went to 104, and it ended up causing this cascade of 4 years of really sort of hell. Brutal depression, anxiety, where I tried everything. I tried, I was in and out of the hospital because it was so severe. Just the fear and the pain. And I love life, but I couldn't touch it. It really affected my brain and my chemistry, and I had to stop my work. And so I ended up having, because of that, I ended up put on a number of medications, and one of them was Ativan, and I was put on a substantial 2 milligrams of Ativan and lamotrigine and these other drugs, which I was lucky enough to get off over time. But those drugs, and they didn't help me at all. They did for a couple of weeks, but I was too afraid to go off them because I was so severely depressed. I was worried it would make it worse. And honestly, I just felt like I wanted to die, and because of the pain, just because of the pain. But I was desperate to find an answer, and I tried electric shock therapy, which was horrible and didn't work, and I tried a number of other quite intensive stuff, and the hospitals were horrible. They just drugged me up more, and they're quite dark, dingy places. So what ended up happening is I found out about something called deep brain stimulation. I saw it on 60 Minutes, that they were doing this study in Toronto, where I'm from, where 4 of 6 people that had this special procedure in their brain, and these were people that had severe depression that had lasted, some of them 20 years, where nothing worked whatsoever. They found that they had this procedure, and 4 of 6 of them, the first 6 that were done, got better, and they felt better, and it really helped them immensely. And that, ironically, was happening in my own city. So I begged to get in this study, and I was the 21st person in the world to have it done. What they do is they put 2 electrodes inside of my brain, a wire down here, and there's a little stimulator in my chest, which sort of acts like white noise. It stimulates this little area. They found there's a little nerve in the brain that's overactive, and this just acts like it just calms that little nerve down, and they found that really helped people with depression. I don't even feel it, but that's what it does. So I had open brain surgery in 12 hours. It was extremely scary, but a few months later, I was a lot better, substantially better, to the point where now in the last 4 years, I've created 2 interesting companies, and I'm back in my life, and have wonderful life, friends, sports, everything, and I'm appreciative. But what happens is, because I believe now of these medications, now my body is sort of toxic, and I have benzo withdrawals constantly, which benzos are the Ativan. They're also in the same category as Valium, if you've heard of Valium or Klonopin or Xanax. And what I've read, I've found out, is that they're the most addictive drug there is on the planet, and they're extremely negative for the body. And they're only supposed to be given for a couple of weeks, but I've been on them probably for, 7 years. And I've been trying to cut down over 2 years. I came from 2 milligrams to 0.8 milligrams, and I just couldn't do it anymore because of the ups and downs are surreal. And I'll go from being someone who's very as I said, active and loving of life and happy, to suddenly it'll shift. My chemistry will shift, and I'll be crying like a baby, and for days, and sad and scared, and and depressed, and I have to fake it in my work, and but and it's been horrible, and I haven't really known what I can do for this. I've tried everything. I've tried to cut down. I've tried to try, every natural substance. Tried other medications to try and get off this medication, and nothing worked. And I find that it's been a substantial issue in my life, and I'm maybe having 50% of my life is great, and 50 to 60, and the other is scary and horrible. So I needed to do something, and I searched far and wide, and what I found, not a lot out there, but what I found, and I read and I studied, and I found that there's a lot of studies that using a technique of sauna, intensive sauna, with a substantial amount of chelators, detoxers that you put in your body, what they find is if you spend a lot of time trying to get rid of all the toxins, the heavy metals, the neurotoxins in the body, by sweating them out, but you have to use a certain substance, etc., to do it, that you can absolutely come off these medications. And there's not a lot of information about that, because unfortunately the drug companies don't really care about this. It's not in normal medical practice. So but there's been a number of studies being done actually with the New York firefighters who were in 9/11, who had some brutal experiences obviously there, and were their lungs got full of all those heavy metals, and they were a lot of them were chronically depressed and chronic fatigue and on all these different drugs, and they did this type of sauna technique for a month, and the majority of them had really strong results that did it. So I read about that, and there were only 2 centers in North America doing this type of program for people trying to get off everything from psych drugs to the heroin to every type of drug. But they've had quite good success with benzodiazepines, again, which was the Ativan. So I chose to do it. It took me 6 months to decide. I was scared out of my mind to leave my home and my friends and my family. And when I get depressed, I'm great in life, and then suddenly when I get low from this, I get scared out of my mind. And what they find is the GABA receptors in your brain and what GABA receptors are, when you see something scary, like let's say a tiger came towards you, your brain would immediately shoot these fight or flight fearful chemicals off. But what GABA does, GABA actually, once the issue is gone, the tiger is gone, it's like a breaker, and it breaks those intense chemicals to allow you to. But what benzos do is they sort of take over that experience, and in turn they end up causing you substantial issues. So they take over, and then your GABA receptors don't work anymore. They say, okay, we're not going to work because you got benzos, and they don't work anymore, and then the benzos start not being as effective, and that's what ends up happening. Then you're suddenly you don't have the GABA receptors, and you're so anxiety, any chemical changes make you anxious and scared, and I get a lot of symptoms that are ridiculous out of nowhere. And I'm an active guy, athletic. I do a ton of sports. That's probably my best antidepressant. But you can get anything from chronic fatigue for days to painful legs and bodies to severe anxiety and edginess. It's hard to sleep. So, anyways, long story short, I decided to make a trip to an alternative rehab center. And that's what I did, and I went to the desert of Sedona, where I've been now for 5 days. Probably the scariest thing I've done. I went from, as I said, my friend's family, being in a nice condo and working great job, and having the support of people and eating what I want, to coming to a place that is completely all natural. Sauning 3-4 hours a day. So anyways, this is my blog. I've done 5 days here, so in my next 15 minutes I'll explain to you what's happened and how the experience of living here was, etc. But I wanted to sort of give you some background about how I ended up here, and why I'm going to be recording these blogs. Okay? Take care. Thanks.